Millionaire gave homeless mom $500 for food. When he saw her photo, he uncovered a secret that brought him to his knees. His late wife kept this mystery hidden for 20 years. Amy collapsed on the Providence sidewalk, her small body shaking with fever. Grace dropped to her knees beside her 4-year-old daughter, panic rising in her throat. "Please, baby, stay with me," Grace whispered, pulling Amy closer to shield her from the December snow. She had already tried 5 different shelters, all full due to the storm. Michael Harrison watched the scene from his Rolls-Royce. He hadn't planned to stop downtown today, but something about the young mother's desperation pierced through his carefully constructed walls. Maybe it was the way she held her daughter, so similar to how Eleanor used to hold their foster children before she passed away. His driver waited for instructions as Michael studied the pair. The little girl's blue eyes, visible even from this distance, were unnervingly familiar. And around the mother's neck, Michael's heart stopped. That pearl necklace, he would recognize it anywhere. "Wait here," he told his driver, stepping out into the snow. Grace instinctively pulled Amy closer as the well-dressed man approached. She had learned the hard way not to trust strangers, no matter how refined they appeared. "Don't be afraid," Michael said, reaching for his wallet. He pulled out 5 $100 bills. "Please, take this. Your daughter needs help." Grace stared at the money, her hand trembling as she reached for it. Amy's burning forehead against her neck made the decision for her. May I take a photo of you both?" Michael asked, surprising even himself. "To make sure you're okay. Maybe I could help with a job later." Grace nodded hesitantly. As she smiled for the photo, Michael noticed how her eyes crinkled slightly at the corners, exactly like Eleanor's used to. "Thank you," Grace whispered, clutching the money. "I'm Grace. This is Amy." "Michael Harrison," he replied, watching as Amy stirred slightly, humming a tune under her breath. His blood froze. It was Eleanor's lullaby, the one she had composed herself. From the shadows of a nearby building, Alexander Pierce observed the interaction with growing interest. He had been tracking Michael's movements for months, waiting for an opportunity. Now, watching this strange encounter, Pierce sensed he had finally found his leverage. Grace hurried Amy into the nearest diner, the warmth inside a shocking contrast to the bitter cold. Michael stood in the snow, staring at the photo on his phone. Something about Grace's features nagged at his memory. That evening, alone in his $20 million mansion, Michael examined the photo more carefully on his iPad. The smile, the dimple on her chin, the way her eyes closed slightly. They were identical to Eleanor's. His hands shaking, Michael rushed to his office and opened the safe where he kept Eleanor's most precious memories. Among old photos and love letters, he found 7 numbered envelopes, each marked, "Open only after my death, Eleanor." Even 5 years after losing her to a rare heart condition, Michael had never found the courage to read his wife's final messages. Until tonight. With trembling fingers, he opened the first envelope. "My beloved Michael, if you're reading this, it means I'm no longer there. There's a secret I've carried for 2 decades that I must now confess." Michael collapsed into his chair as the words changed everything. In 1997, before meeting him, Eleanor had given up a daughter for adoption. The girl was born on April the 12th at St. Mary's Hospital, exactly the details Grace had mentioned during their brief conversation. Outside his office window, the snow continued to fall on Providence, covering the city in white. Michael stared at Eleanor's handwriting, his world crumbling around him. The homeless young woman he had just helped wasn't just a random act of charity. She was Eleanor's long-lost daughter, and little Amy, with her familiar blue eyes and haunting lullaby, was his step-granddaughter. The sound of Eleanor's melody echoed in his mind as Michael reached for the second envelope, knowing his life would never be the same. Michael spent the night reading Eleanor's letters. each revelation hitting harder than the last. The second envelope contained photos of a pregnant Eleanor at a countryside house, hiding from society's judgment. The third revealed years of secret searches and private investigators' reports. His hands trembled as he opened the fourth envelope. "I've been depositing money into a secret account for her. Every Christmas I left anonymous gifts at the orphanage. On her 16th birthday, I made sure she received my pearl necklace. The same one my mother gave me, the necklace." Michael's mind raced back to Grace, wearing it just hours ago. It couldn't be coincidence. His phone buzzed. A text from Pierce. "Interesting encounter downtown today. We should talk about Eleanor." Michael ignored it, focusing on the fifth letter. Eleanor had tracked their daughter to Providence but lost the trail when a fire destroyed the orphanage records. Still, she never stopped searching. The sixth envelope revealed something that made Michael's blood run cold. Eleanor's rare heart condition was genetic, with a 50% chance of appearing in the third generation. If Grace was indeed their daughter, Amy could be carrying the same deadly gene. A quick search on his iPad confirmed his fears. St. Mary's Hospital records showed a baby girl born on April 12, 1997, adopted 2 weeks later. The mother's name was redacted, but the dates matched perfectly. Michael pulled up the photo of Grace and Amy again. The resemblance to Eleanor was undeniable. The same smile, the same dimple, even the way Grace held her head slightly tilted, all Eleanor's mannerisms. His security team's background check on Grace arrived via email. Grace Williams, 23, former administrative assistant, lost her job during COVID. Boyfriend abandoned her while pregnant. No family records found before age 3. The seventh and final envelope contained Eleanor's last words. "If you find her, Michael, tell her I thought about her every single day, that every note I played on that piano was a prayer for her safety. Most importantly, tell her I love her, always have, always will." The phone buzzed again. Pierce. Eleanor left more secrets than just letters. "Meet me tomorrow. Alone." Michael's hands shook as he dialed his private investigator. "I need DNA confirmation. There's a cup at Joe's diner she used today. Get it." He walked to Eleanor's piano, untouched since her death. The keys held 20 years of her secret pain. Songs played while thinking of the daughter she lost. Michael pressed one key, and Eleanor's lullaby, the same one Amy had hummed, filled the room. A notification lit up his phone. Grace and Amy had checked into the Summer Inn motel. At least they were safe tonight thanks to the $500. But for how long? If Amy carried Eleanor's genetic condition, the last security report showed Pierce leaving his office late, carrying a file marked Eleanor Harrison, 1997. Whatever Pierce knew, he was already moving his pieces. Michael opened his laptop, transferring $15 million to a separate account. If Amy had Eleanor's condition, treatment would be astronomical. The board would never approve company funds for this. Dawn broke over Providence as Michael made his decision. The company, his reputation, his entire life's work. Everything would be risked to protect Eleanor's daughter and granddaughter. He owed her that much. His phone buzzed one final time. The DNA results were in. Match confirmed. 99.9% probability of parent-child relationship between Eleanor Harrison's genetic profile and subject Grace Williams. Michael stared at the message as his world shifted permanently. Outside his window, snow continued falling on Providence, covering everything in white, just like the day he first met Eleanor 20 years ago. He reached for his phone to call Grace, then stopped. How do you tell a homeless young mother that her life is about to change forever? That her daughter might be carrying a deadly genetic time bomb? The piano's keys gleamed in the morning light, waiting. Just like Eleanor had waited all those years, hoping to find her daughter, Michael straightened his jacket. It was time to honor his wife's last wish, no matter the cost. Michael arrived at the Summer Inn just as the ambulance pulled up. Grace stood in the parking lot screaming for help as paramedics rushed to room 115. "She won't wake up," Grace cried. "She was fine last night, but now—" Amy lay unconscious on the motel bed, her skin burning with fever. The same symptoms Eleanor had shown 20 years ago. "BP dropping," one paramedic announced. "We need to move now." Michael stepped forward. "I'll handle all medical expenses." Grace spun around. "You? Why are you here?" Before Michael could answer, Amy started convulsing. The paramedics moved quickly, loading her into the ambulance. Grace jumped in beside her daughter, leaving Michael standing in the snow. "Providence General," the paramedic told him before closing the doors. At the hospital, Dr. Sarah Chen reviewed Amy's initial tests with growing concern. "These readings, I've only seen them once before." "When?" Michael asked, already knowing the answer. "Eleanor Harrison's case." "But that was—" Dr. Chen looked up sharply. "Why are you involved in this, Mr. Harrison?" Grace paced the waiting room, clutching Eleanor's pearl necklace. "What aren't you telling me? Why are you really helping us?" Michael pulled out his phone, showing her Eleanor's photo. Grace froze. That's my necklace. "But how—" "Eleanor was my wife," Michael said. "And according to her letters, she was also your mother." Grace stepped back. "No. My mother abandoned me, left me at an orphanage. She was 19, alone, pressured by her family. She spent the rest of her life looking for you." "You're lying." Grace's voice shook. "This is some sick joke." Dr. Chen interrupted them. "We need to talk. Amy's condition, it's genetic. The same heart disorder Mrs. Harrison had." Grace collapsed into a chair. "What are you saying?" "Without immediate treatment, Amy has 6 months, maybe less." Dr. Chen handed them a file. "There's an experimental procedure, but cost isn't an issue," Michael said. "It's $15 million, Dr. Chen replied, "and only 3 hospitals worldwide perform it." Grace stared at them both. "Why would you pay that? Even if what you're saying is true, because Eleanor made me promise." Michael showed her the DNA results. "This proves it. You're her daughter." Grace's phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. "Ask him about April 15th, 1997. Ask what really happened to Eleanor Harrison." "Who's Pierce?" Grace showed Michael the message. Michael's jaw tightened. "Someone who wants to destroy everything Eleanor protected." The heart monitor in Amy's room started beeping rapidly. Dr. Chen rushed in, shouting orders to her team. "She needs the treatment now," Dr. Chen announced. "We're arranging transfer to Boston Children's." "I'll make the calls," Michael said, stepping out. His phone rang. The board chairman. "Emergency meeting in an hour. Pierce showed us some interesting documents about Eleanor." Grace watched through the window as doctors stabilized Amy. The pearl necklace felt heavy against her skin. "She used to play piano," Grace said quietly. "My birth mother." "I don't know how I know that, but—" "Eleanor's lullaby," Michael nodded. "Amy was humming it yesterday. How could she know?" Another text from Pierce. "Eleanor left more than just a necklace. Time's running out, for everyone." Dr. Chen returned with transfer papers. "We need decisions now." Grace looked at Eleanor's photo again, then at Amy's room. 20 years of secrets were unraveling, but her daughter couldn't wait. "Tell me everything," she said to Michael, "starting with why my mother really died." Outside the hospital, Pierce watched through his car window, Eleanor's old diary in his hands. Soon they'd all learn the truth. About Eleanor, about that night in 1997, and about why she really gave up her baby. The snow started falling again as Michael prepared to reveal the hardest truth of all. Some secrets were meant to stay buried, but with Amy's life hanging in the balance, everything would come to light, whether they were ready or not. The orphanage files lay scattered across Michael's office desk. Most records were lost in the fire, but Eleanor had kept her own detailed notes. "She came here every Christmas," Michael explained to Grace. "Left gifts under different names. Watched from a distance." Grace sifted through the papers, stopping at a photo. "This piano. I've seen it before. Eleanor's piano, still in the mansion. In my dreams, Grace's hands shook. I hear music from it. A nurse interrupted them with news about Amy's transfer to Boston. As they discussed details, music drifted from the hospital chapel. Someone's playing Eleanor's lullaby, Michael said. They found the chapel empty, the piano silent, but Grace stood transfixed before it. Show me, Michael said. Grace sat down, her fingers finding the keys without hesitation. Eleanor's lullaby filled the chapel, note for note perfect. I've never played piano in my life, Grace whispered, pulling back. Michael's phone buzzed. Pierce. DNA isn't the only proof. Ask her about the scar on her left shoulder. Grace touched her shoulder instinctively. How does he know about my birthmark? Because Eleanor had the same one. Michael showed her another photo. Here, the chapel door opened. A woman in her 40s entered. I'm Eleanor Harrison's daughter. I have proof. Michael recognized her. Janet Mills, third false claim this week. But Grace was already approaching the piano. Play it, Grace challenged. Play her lullaby. Janet hesitated, then left quickly. There will be more, Michael warned. Pierce is behind these claims. Grace returned to Amy's room, where Dr. Chen waited with updates. The transfer was set for tomorrow, but Amy's condition was deteriorating. We found something else, Dr. Chen said. Amy's been drawing this. The crayon drawing showed a woman at a piano, surrounded by music notes. In the corner, Amy had written, Grandma's Song. Michael's board meeting notification flashed on his phone. Pierce had called an emergency session. I have to go, he told Grace. But first, there's something you need to see. At the mansion, Michael opened Eleanor's piano bench. Inside lay her coded diary and a key. The diary explains everything, he said. About Pierce, about that night in 1997, about why she had to give you up. Grace opened the diary. Entries were written in musical notation. Eleanor's private code. I can read it, Grace realized, scanning the notes. How can I read it? The diary revealed a darker story. Pierce had been Eleanor's first love, but he turned dangerous, possessive. When she discovered she was pregnant, Michael's phone rang. The board chairman demanded his immediate presence. Go, Grace said, absorbed in the diary. I need time with this anyway. At the board meeting, Pierce stood ready with his presentation. Eleanor Harrison wasn't who you thought she was. He clicked through documents, bank transfers, secret accounts, private investigator reports. She embezzled company funds, Pierce claimed. Used them to track down her abandoned child. Lies, Michael stood. Show them the whole truth, Pierce. About April 15, 1997. Pierce's confidence wavered. That's not relevant. Eleanor left evidence against you, in case anything happened to her. Grace's voice cut through the tension. She stood in the doorway, holding Eleanor's diary. I know what you did, she said to Pierce. It's all here, in her own words. Pierce stared at the diary. You can't read that. It's in code. I can read every word. Grace stepped forward. Should I tell them what really happened that night? Why my mother had to run? The board members watched in confusion as Pierce's face drained of color. Grace sat at the conference room piano, another of Eleanor's donations to the company. The lullaby flowed from her fingers. Impossible, Pierce whispered. Amy's monitor alarm blared through Grace's phone. Dr. Chen's voice was urgent. Get back here, now. She's crashing. Grace ran out, leaving the diary open on the piano. Michael moved to follow, but Pierce blocked him. This isn't over, Pierce warned. You're right, Michael replied. When Amy's safe, we'll finish what Eleanor started. Outside, snow continued falling on Providence. In the hospital, Amy fought for life. And in Eleanor's diary, the truth waited. Written in the language of music that only a mother and daughter could share. The war for Eleanor's legacy was just beginning. Amy's condition stabilized, but Dr. Chen's expression remained grave. The transfer to Boston needs to happen now. What aren't you telling us? Grace demanded. Amy's heart is failing faster than Eleanor's did. Without immediate intervention, Michael's phone lit up with Pierce's ultimatum. Sell me the company for $100 million, or I release everything. You have 1 hour. The board had already frozen Michael's access to company funds. His personal fortune was the only option left. The treatment costs $15 million, Michael told Grace. I'll need to liquidate everything. Why would you do that for us? Because Eleanor never stopped fighting for you. I won't either. Pierce entered Amy's room uninvited. I have another option. Get out. Grace stood protective over Amy. Eleanor left something else, Pierce said. Insurance, she called it. Worth millions. Michael recognized the manipulation. What do you want? Sign over the company. I'll fund Amy's treatment. And destroy Eleanor's legacy? Grace challenged. I read her diary. I know what you did to her. Pierce's face hardened. You have no idea what really happened. A nurse rushed in. Amy's stats are dropping again. As doctors worked to stabilize her, Michael received an alert. The board had called an emergency vote to remove him. 1 hour, Pierce reminded them, leaving. Tick-tock? Grace opened Eleanor's diary again. There's something here about Pierce's mother. Michael's phone rang, his financial advisor. If you liquidate now, you'll lose 60% value. Do it, Michael ordered. All of it. Grace found the entry she wanted. Pierce's mother. She was pregnant too, same time as Eleanor. What? Eleanor helped her escape Pierce's father, hid her until the baby was born. Michael's lawyer called next. The board vote is happening now. On Amy's bedside table, her latest drawing showed 2 pianos, one black, one white. Under each she'd written Mommy and Grandma. She's never seen Eleanor's piano, Grace whispered. Pierce returned with papers. Time's up. Sign, or I release everything to the press. Michael moved to sign, but Grace stopped him. Show him the diary entry, she said, about his sister. Pierce froze. What sister? Grace read from the diary. Your mother didn't die in childbirth, Pierce. Eleanor helped her disappear. To protect your sister from your father. You're lying. Grace played the coded melody that accompanied the entry. Pierce staggered back. That song? My mother used to hum it. Eleanor saved them both, Grace continued, like she tried to save me. Amy's monitor screamed again. Dr. Chen rushed in with transfer papers. Now or never, she announced. The helicopter's waiting. Pierce stared at the diary, then at Amy. Something in him shifted. I'll handle the board, he said quietly. Get her to Boston. Why? Michael demanded. Because Eleanor saved my sister. Pierce headed for the door. I owe her that much. Grace grabbed the diary. There's more you need to know. Later, Pierce said. Save your daughter first. The helicopter thundered overhead as Amy was prepared for transfer. Grace found one last diary entry. Michael, she called. This part's about you. But Michael was already signing away his fortune to save Amy. 20 years ago, he had failed to see Eleanor's pain. He wouldn't fail her daughter now. Mr. Harrison, his lawyer called. The board vote. Doesn't matter, Michael cut him off. Some things are more important than money. As Amy was wheeled toward the helicopter, she opened her eyes briefly. Grandma's piano, she whispered. Both of them. Grace and Michael exchanged looks. Somewhere in Eleanor's diary, the truth about 2 pianos waited to be discovered. But first, they had to save Amy. The helicopter lifted off into the snowy Providence sky, carrying with it their hopes and Eleanor's legacy. Some choices were impossible. Others were simply necessary. Boston Children's Hospital buzzed with pre-surgery preparations. Amy lay connected to machines while Dr. Wilson, the specialist, reviewed Eleanor's old medical files. The genetic marker is identical, he confirmed. But Amy's case is progressing faster. Grace hadn't left Amy's side in 24 hours. How long is the surgery? 8 hours minimum, no guarantees. Michael entered with the final payment confirmation. His accounts were empty, property sold at a loss. Everything he'd built over 30 years gone in a day. Pierce arrived unexpectedly. The board meeting's in chaos. I don't care, Michael replied. You should. I found Eleanor's second piano. Grace looked up from Amy's bed. What second piano? The one she kept at the summer house, where she hid my mother. Dr. Wilson interrupted. It's time. Amy opened her eyes as they prepared to move her. Mommy? The song. Grace started humming Eleanor's lullaby. Amy smiled, then her eyes closed again. BP dropping, a nurse called out. They rushed Amy to surgery, leaving Grace, Michael, and Pierce in the waiting room. Grace clutched Eleanor's diary. Tell me about the second piano, she demanded. Pierce sat down. Eleanor bought it when she helped my mother escape. They stayed at her family's summer house for months, while she was pregnant with me. Yes, my mother played too. They composed together. Grace opened the diary to a new section. There's a duet here, 2 parts. She went to the waiting room piano, another of Eleanor's hospital donations. Her fingers found the first part. Pierce stared at the music. My mother played the second part. Show me. Pierce hesitated, then joined her at the piano. Together, they played Eleanor's duet. The waiting room fell silent. She wrote this while they were hiding, Pierce said. 2 mothers, 2 daughters. Michael's phone buzzed. The board vote was in. He'd lost the company. A nurse rushed in. Amy's in trouble. Dr. Wilson needs family medical history. Grace read frantically through the diary. Here. Eleanor wrote about a similar crisis during her surgery. The notes described a crucial decision the doctors had made. Grace ran to the operating room. Hours passed. Pierce made calls, trying to save what he could of the company. Michael sat motionless, staring at Eleanor's photo. Finally, Dr. Wilson emerged. We found something unusual. What? Amy has a rare antibody. We've only seen it once before. Eleanor, Michael guessed. No, in Pierce's mother's records. Pierce dropped his phone. What? Dr. Wilson continued. This antibody is extremely rare, genetic. It's actually helping Amy fight the condition. Grace turned to Pierce. Your mother and Eleanor, they weren't just hiding together. They were sisters, Pierce finished. That's why Eleanor helped her. The diary's final pages confirmed it. Eleanor had discovered they shared a father. She protected her sister and later tried to protect her daughter. Amy's going to make it, Dr. Wilson announced. That antibody saved her. Pierce made one last call. The board vote is reversed. I told them everything. Why? Michael asked. Eleanor saved my family. Now her blood saved Amy. Pierce looked at Grace. We're all connected. Grace went to check on Amy. The little girl slept peacefully, Eleanor's lullaby playing softly on the room's radio. How? Grace started. I requested it, Pierce admitted. It's my mother's recording, from that summer with Eleanor. Michael's phone lit up. His lawyer had found a way to recover his assets. The company was safe. But Michael wasn't listening. Through the window, he watched Grace with Amy, saw Pierce finally at peace, and knew Eleanor had planned it all. 2 pianos, 2 sisters, 2 daughters. One legacy of love that refused to be broken. Amy stirred, humming the lullaby in her sleep. Outside, the snow had stopped. A new day was dawning over Boston. Some battles were fought with medicine, others with truth. Eleanor had won both. 1 month after the surgery, Amy sat at Eleanor's piano in the mansion, her fingers dancing across the keys. The lullaby filled the room as Grace watched from the doorway. She plays better than I do now, Grace said to Michael. The recovery had been remarkable. Amy's inherited antibody didn't just fight the condition, it was reversing the damage. Pierce entered with a stack of documents. Found these in my mother's storage unit. Old photographs spilled across the piano. 2 young women, identical pearl necklaces, sitting at 2 different pianos. Eleanor and Sarah, Pierce explained. My mother. Grace studied the images. Where is she now? Montreal. Ready to meet you both. Michael's phone rang. The Eleanor Harrison Foundation was officially approved. Their first mission, funding research into the rare antibody that saved Amy. The board wants you back as CEO, Pierce told Michael. No, Michael replied. Grace should take it. Grace looked up from the photos. Me? Eleanor built that company to find you. It's yours now. Amy switched to a new melody. one nobody recognized. "That's not Eleanor's," Pierce said. "No," Grace smiled. "She's composing her own." The doorbell rang. Sarah Pierce stood on the steps, Eleanor's second piano visible in the moving truck behind her. "Hello, Grace," she said. "I'm your aunt." The two women hugged as Amy's new song drifted through the open door. Sarah wiped tears away. "Eleanor wrote you letters too," she told Grace. "Asked me to keep them safe." Inside the second piano's bench, wrapped in silk, lay another set of envelopes. Grace opened the first one with trembling hands. "My dearest daughter, if Sarah has given you these letters, it means you've discovered the truth about our family, about the gift in our blood. The antibody wasn't just rare, it was unique to their bloodline. Eleanor had known Amy might need it someday. She saved everything," Sarah explained. "Medical records, DNA samples, research notes. She knew this day would come." Pierce helped the movers position the second piano opposite Eleanor's. Amy ran her hands over both instruments. "Two songs," she said, "one heart." Grace read through Eleanor's letters as Sarah shared stories of that hidden summer. How they discovered they were sisters, composed together, and promised to protect their daughters. Michael's lawyer arrived with the foundation paperwork. The company would now focus on genetic research and supporting musical education for underprivileged children. "Eleanor would have loved this," Sarah said, watching Amy play. Pierce sat at the second piano, joining Amy's composition. The melody evolved into a duet, just like Eleanor and Sarah, Grace whispered. Michael handed Grace the CEO contract. Ready to continue her legacy? Grace signed without hesitation. 20 years of separation had ended. Eleanor's plan was complete. Amy finished her song with a flourish. "Can we play Grandma's lullaby now? All of us?" Grace took Eleanor's piano. Sarah settled at her old one, and Pierce turned pages as aunt and niece played the familiar melody. Michael watched his new family, remembering Eleanor's final words. "Love finds its way through blood and music." The foundation's first fundraiser was scheduled for next month. Amy would debut her composition, titled Eleanor's Gift. Sarah would move into the guest house, teaching Amy everything Eleanor had taught her about music and resilience. Pierce would head the research division, turning his business skills toward healing instead of profit. And Grace would lead it all, guided by her mother's wisdom, finally where she belonged. "One more song," Amy insisted, starting Eleanor's lullaby again. As the familiar notes filled the mansion, Michael realized Eleanor had orchestrated the perfect symphony, one of family, forgiveness, and love. The two pianos sang together, their music echoing through halls no longer empty, telling a story that began with two sisters and would continue through their daughters. Eleanor's legacy lived on in blood and melody, exactly as she had planned. 6 months after Amy's surgery, the Eleanor Harrison Foundation hosted its first major event. The Providence Symphony Hall was packed as Amy approached Eleanor's restored piano on stage. "Ladies and gentlemen," Grace announced, "my daughter will perform Eleanor's Gift, composed in honor of her grandmother." The audience fell silent as Amy began to play. Her original composition wove Eleanor's lullaby with new themes, telling their family's story through music. In the front row, Michael and Pierce watched as Sarah wiped away tears. The genetic research funded by the foundation had already identified 3 other families carrying the unique antibody. Amy finished to thunderous applause. Grace helped her take a bow as reporters snapped photos. "Ms. Harrison," a journalist called out, "how does it feel to take over your mother's company?" Before Grace could answer, Amy rushed back to the piano. "Wait, there's another song." She pulled sheet music from Eleanor's bench, papers no one had seen before. Sarah gasped. "That's impossible. We composed that the night before." "Before what?" Grace asked. "Before Eleanor discovered she was pregnant with you. We never wrote it down." Amy played the newly discovered piece. Sarah joined her on the second piano, their hands moving in perfect synchronization. Pierce checked his phone. The medical board approved the new treatment protocol. Eleanor's research is saving lives. Michael nodded, remembering Eleanor's words. Music heals more than hearts. After the performance, they gathered in Eleanor's old practice room. A wall of photos traced their journey, from the $500 moment to today's triumph. "There's something else," Sarah said, retrieving a package from her car. Eleanor left this for today. Inside, they found a recording dated 1 week before her death. Grace pressed play. Eleanor's voice filled the room. "My dearest family, if you're listening to this, then everything worked exactly as I hoped. The pianos are reunited, the music continues, and most importantly, you found each other." Amy climbed onto Grace's lap as the recording continued. "Grace, my daughter, your gift for music wasn't random. It's in our blood, just like the antibody that saved Amy. I knew someday she might need it. That's why I made sure Sarah stayed close, ready to help when the time came." Sarah squeezed Grace's hand as Eleanor's message played on. "Michael, thank you for keeping your promise. Pierce, for choosing love over anger. Sarah, for protecting our secret until the right moment. And Amy, my precious granddaughter, thank you for bringing my lullaby back to life." The recording ended with Eleanor playing her lullaby one final time. "There's more," Sarah said. "The Foundation's research found something remarkable. The antibody is strongest in people with musical ability." Grace looked at Amy, still playing with the piano keys. "That's why she made sure I would find the music." Michael checked his watch. "The board's waiting. They want to expand the research program." "Not today," Grace decided. "Today is for family." They spent the evening playing both pianos, sharing stories of Eleanor. Amy composed a new piece on the spot, while Pierce and Michael attempted a clumsy duet. Sarah revealed more details about that hidden summer when two sisters discovered their shared father and vowed to protect their daughters. The Foundation's work would continue tomorrow. Lives would be saved, music would be taught, and Eleanor's legacy would grow. But tonight was for celebrating what $500 and a mother's love had built. A family united by blood, music, and an unbreakable spirit. Amy fell asleep between the two pianos, Eleanor's lullaby playing softly on the recording. "She planned everything," Grace whispered. "Every detail. That was Eleanor," Michael smiled, "always composing the perfect ending." Outside, snow began falling on Providence again, just like the day it all began. But this time, no one was alone. Eleanor's symphony was complete, playing on through the generations, exactly as she had written it. The Eleanor Harrison Foundation's success drew unwanted attention. James Crawford, former board member, called an emergency press conference. "The company's resources are being misused," he announced. "This miracle antibody is a fraud." Grace watched the broadcast from her office, Eleanor's old office. Amy practiced piano down the hall while Sarah reviewed new research data. "He's wrong," Sarah said, showing Grace the latest results. 3 more children saved this month alone. Michael entered with more concerns. Crawford's gathered support. He wants a full investigation. "Into what?" Grace demanded. "Everything. Eleanor's research, the Foundation's finances, even Amy's recovery." Pierce arrived with his own news. Crawford made contact with someone from the orphanage, claims to have original adoption papers. "Impossible," Sarah interrupted. "Those records burned." "Unless they didn't," Pierce said. Amy stopped playing, Eleanor's lullaby cutting off mid-note. "Mom? Someone's here." A woman stood in the doorway. Elderly, familiar. "I was there that night," she said, "when Eleanor gave up her baby." Grace recognized her. "Sister Mary Catherine?" "The fire didn't destroy everything," the nun said. "Eleanor made sure of that." She placed a box on the desk. Inside lay original documents, photographs, and a letter dated the day of Grace's birth. "She knew this day would come," Sister Mary Catherine explained. "Asked me to protect these until they were needed." Crawford's second press conference began on the office TV. "I have proof of extensive fraud dating back to Eleanor Harrison's time as CEO. He's desperate," Pierce said. "The old guard losing power. Grace opened Eleanor's birth letter. Her mother's words were clear. "If anyone ever questions what we built, show them this." Attached was detailed documentation of Eleanor's genetic research, the antibody discovery, and her plan to protect future generations. She didn't just study the condition, Sarah realized. She found the cure in our music. Crawford's team announced plans to seize Foundation records, but Eleanor had prepared for this too. "Look," Grace pointed to the letter's final page. "Account numbers, research backups, everything documented through international patents." "Crawford can't touch those," Michael confirmed. Amy returned to the piano, playing a new variation of Eleanor's lullaby. The melody carried through the building as employees gathered, showing support. "The board meets tomorrow," Pierce said. "Crawford's calling for a vote of no confidence." Grace studied Eleanor's documentation, every detail anticipated, every challenge prepared for. "Let them vote," she decided. "Mom left us everything we need." Sister Mary Catherine smiled. "Eleanor said you'd say that. She left something else too." From the box, she withdrew a USB drive. Her final testimony, about Crawford, about the research, about everything. They watched Eleanor's video together. She detailed Crawford's past attempts to steal her research, his interference with her search for Grace, his threats when she discovered the musical connection to the antibody. "Perfect timing," Pierce said, as always. Sarah examined the new data. "The antibody responds to specific frequencies. That's why music matters." "She knew," Grace whispered. "She made sure I'd find music, that Amy would inherit it." Crawford's final threat came via email. "Turn over the Foundation or face charges." Grace's response was simple. She walked to Eleanor's piano and began to play, not the lullaby but the duet Eleanor and Sarah composed that hidden summer. The music reached the lobby, where reporters gathered. Someone streamed it live. By evening, Crawford's allegations fell apart. Eleanor's evidence was irrefutable. The board backed Grace unanimously. "What now?" Michael asked. Grace watched Amy playing, Sarah teaching, Pierce coordinating international research teams. "We expand," she decided. "Help more families, just like Mom planned." Sister Mary Catherine placed one final item on the desk, a photo of Eleanor holding newborn Grace. "She said to give you this when you were ready," the nun smiled. "When you understood why music matters." The photo showed Eleanor at the piano, baby Grace asleep as she played. On the back, she'd written, "Some legacies live in blood, others in melody. The strongest live in both." Amy's music continued down the hall, Eleanor's lullaby evolving into something new, yet familiar. Like her grandmother, she was composing the future, one note at a time. Crawford launched his final attack during the Foundation's International Research Conference. As Grace presented Eleanor's findings to medical experts, he burst into the auditorium. "I have proof this is all a lie," he announced, waving documents. "Eleanor Harrison stole this research," the audience murmured as Grace stood firm at the podium. "From who?" "From me," a voice called from the back. Dr. Thomas Chen, Eleanor's former research partner, walked down the aisle. Pierce tensed. This wasn't part of Crawford's known plan. "Eleanor and I developed this theory together," Dr. Chen continued, "before she shut me out." Sarah, watching the live stream from the hospital where Amy had her final checkup, immediately called Pierce. "Chen's lying," she said. "I was there. Eleanor fired him for falsifying data." Grace remained calm. "Dr. Chen, what's the connection between music and the antibody?" He hesitated. "That's complicated." "Play it," Grace told Amy, who sat at the conference hall piano. Amy began Eleanor's lullaby. The medical sensors monitoring participating patients registered immediate responses. "The frequency pattern activates the antibody," Grace explained. "Something only Eleanor discovered." Dr. Chen's confidence wavered. Crawford pressed on. "The girl's been coached," he insisted. "This is manipulation." Michael stood. "Then explain this." He played Eleanor's video testimony. She detailed Chen's ethical violations, Crawford's threats, and most importantly, Her breakthrough discovery. The antibody responds to specific musical frequencies, Eleanor explained. It's not just genetic, it's orchestral. Chen broke first. Crawford paid me to lie. Security escorted them out as Grace continued her presentation. The medical data was undeniable. Eleanor's research was revolutionary. Then Amy stopped playing mid-note. "Mom?" Grace turned to find her daughter pale, swaying at the piano. "Call the emergency team," Michael shouted. Sarah's voice came through Pierce's phone. Her latest test showed a mutation. The antibody's effectiveness is wearing off. Grace rushed to Amy as medical staff responded. This was exactly what Eleanor had feared and prepared for. "Get her to the lab," Grace ordered, "and bring both pianos." The research facility transformed into an emergency room. Amy's condition deteriorated as doctors scrambled to understand the mutation. "It's changing frequency," Sarah realized, studying the data. "The antibody needs a new musical key." Grace opened Eleanor's final research notes. She predicted this. The antibody evolves. The music has to evolve with it. They moved both pianos into the lab. Monitors showed Amy's declining vitals as Grace and Sarah took their positions. "Ready?" Grace asked. They began playing Eleanor's duet, but with a crucial difference. Following Eleanor's notes, they modified the frequency pattern. Amy's monitors stabilized. "It's working," Pierce confirmed. "The antibody's responding to the new pattern." Crawford watched from police custody as news channels reported Eleanor's ultimate vindication. Her research hadn't just saved lives, it had created a new field of medical science. Amy's strength returned as the modified melody took effect. She joined Grace at Eleanor's piano. "I hear it now," she said. "Grandma's new song." Together, they played the evolved version of the lullaby. The conference attendees watched in awe as medical data confirmed the breakthrough. "Eleanor knew," Sarah whispered. "The music had to grow with each generation." Grace hugged Amy, finally understanding her mother's full legacy. It wasn't just the antibody, or the music, or even the foundation. It was the knowledge that love, like melodies, must evolve to survive. The conference ended with unanimous support for expanding Eleanor's research. Crawford and Chen faced charges for conspiracy and fraud, but in the lab, Grace, Amy, and Sarah simply played together, their combined melodies strengthening the gift in their blood. Eleanor's final mystery was solved. She hadn't just left them a cure, she'd left them the key to keeping it alive. Through music, through blood, through generations to come, the evolution of love composed in perfect harmony. 1 year after Crawford's arrest, the Eleanor Harrison Foundation celebrated its global expansion. 50 children had been saved by the musical treatment protocol. Grace stood at the podium in Symphony Hall, addressing representatives from medical centers worldwide. "Today we announce the opening of 10 new research facilities," she said, each equipped with Eleanor's pianos. Amy, now fully recovered, prepared for her performance with the Boston Symphony Orchestra. Her composition, Evolution of Love, would demonstrate the treatment's latest breakthrough. Michael watched from backstage as Pierce distributed the new research findings. "The modified antibody is stable," Pierce confirmed. "Eleanor's evolved melody worked." Sarah entered with urgent news. They found another storage unit, Eleanor's last one. Inside, they discovered research notes dating back 25 years. Eleanor had tracked the antibody through 7 generations of their family. "Look at this," Sarah pointed to a diagram. "The music changes every 3 generations. She knew Amy would need a new melody." Grace examined the papers. "There's more. Names, dates." She found other families with the gene. "But why didn't she contact them?" Michael asked. Amy called them to the stage. "It's time." As Amy began to play, the medical monitors showed something extraordinary. The audience members' vital signs synchronized with the music. "Everyone," Grace whispered. "Not just the gene carriers." Eleanor's final notes explained everything. The antibody wasn't limited to their bloodline. The right musical frequency could activate it in anyone. She couldn't announce it, Sarah realized. Not until the research was protected. That's why she waited. Pierce's phone lit up with confirmation. The World Health Organization had approved the treatment for global use. Amy finished her performance to thunderous applause, but she wasn't done. "I found something else in Grandma's piano," she announced. She played a new melody, one no one had heard before. The medical monitors exploded with activity. "It's a universal key," Grace understood. Eleanor found the frequency that works for everyone. Crawford watched the broadcast from his prison cell as his last attempt to discredit Eleanor crumbled. The Foundation's legal team delivered the final news. All charges against Eleanor's research were dismissed. Her patents were secure. "There's one more thing," Sarah said. She led them to Eleanor's last safety deposit box. Inside lay a letter addressed to the future. "My dear ones," Eleanor had written, "by now you understand why the music had to evolve. Love changes with each generation, so must its expression." Amy sat at Eleanor's piano, playing the universal melody as Grace read on. "The antibody was never meant for just our family. Music belongs to everyone. That's why I hid the final key until you were ready to share it." Medical teams worldwide began reporting successful treatments using Amy's new composition. "Your grandmother was right," Pierce told Amy. "Music really does heal everyone." Grace watched her daughter play, remembering that snowy day when $500 changed everything. "Mom knew," she said. "From the beginning, she knew where this would lead." Sarah opened Eleanor's diary to the last page, finding a note they'd missed. "When you're ready, look behind the second piano's panel. One last gift waits." Amy rushed to check. There, hidden for decades, lay Eleanor's original composition book. "This is it," Sarah confirmed. "The complete evolution of the healing melody." Grace held her mother's work, understanding finally flowing. Eleanor hadn't just saved their family. She'd composed a cure for humanity. The snow fell outside Symphony Hall just like that first day. But now it fell on a world forever, changed by one woman's love, expressed through music that healed across generations. Eleanor's final gift wasn't just the melody. It was the knowledge that love, like music, belongs to everyone. And somewhere, perhaps, she was smiling as her granddaughter played on, the universal melody reaching hearts worldwide. The circle was complete. The healing had begun. 5 years after the universal melody's discovery, Amy prepared for her Carnegie Hall debut. The Eleanor Harrison Foundation now operated in 30 countries, with over 10,000 lives saved. "Ready?" Grace asked, adjusting Amy's necklace. Eleanor's pearls passed down again. "One last check on the monitors," Amy replied. The concert hall had been equipped with medical sensors. Tonight's performance would demonstrate the treatment's evolution to the world's leading researchers. Michael and Pierce reviewed the latest data in the green room. "Every hospital with a piano is now a treatment center," Pierce reported. "The WHO calls it the Harrison Protocol." Sarah entered with the evening's program. "Look what they found in the archives." A photo showed Eleanor at this same venue 30 years ago. She'd played the same piano Amy would use tonight. She planned this too, Grace realized. Even the location. The hall filled with medical professionals, patients, and families who'd been saved by Eleanor's research. Crawford had been right about one thing. It had changed everything. Amy took the stage. The melody began softly, Eleanor's original lullaby. Then it evolved, incorporating the universal frequency that activated healing in everyone. The monitors displayed real-time data as the music affected the audience. Heart rates synchronized. Immune responses strengthened. Grace watched from backstage as her daughter played the piece that had started with $500 and a desperate prayer in the snow. Eleanor Harrison's legacy, the program read, continues through 3 generations of healing through harmony. The Foundation's research centers had proven that regular exposure to the evolved melody prevented illness. Hospitals worldwide now included music therapy in standard treatment. Amy transitioned to the final movement. her own composition. The monitors showed stronger responses than ever. "She's found a new frequency," Sarah whispered. Pierce checked the data. "It's affecting DNA expression. The healing is becoming permanent." The performance ended to a standing ovation, but Amy wasn't finished. "My grandmother left one last gift," she announced. "Tonight, we play it together." Grace and Sarah joined her at 2 additional pianos. The 3 generations, represented through Eleanor's daughter, sister, and granddaughter, began to play. The combined melody filled Carnegie Hall. On the monitors, something unprecedented appeared. "The healing effect," Pierce said. "It's replicating itself." Michael understood first. They don't need the pianos anymore. The music is inside them now. Eleanor's final note in her composition book had predicted this. "When the melody becomes part of them, my work is complete." The foundation announced its next phase, training musicians worldwide to continue the healing legacy. Music schools became medical centers. Concerts became treatment sessions. Crawford, watching from prison, finally admitted the truth in a letter. Eleanor Harrison didn't just change medicine, she changed the definition of healing itself. After the concert, they gathered at Eleanor's piano one last time. The instrument would be housed in the Smithsonian, alongside her research notes. "What now?" Amy asked. Grace touched the keys gently. "Now we do what Mom always intended. We share the music with everyone." The Foundation's next project was already underway. Free pianos and training for every hospital globally. Eleanor's healing melody would reach every corner of Earth. In Providence, snow fell on the building where it all began. A plaque marked the spot. "Here, $500, and a mother's love started a revolution in healing." Inside, Amy played Eleanor's lullaby one last time on the original piano. Tomorrow, the world would play it too. Eleanor's legacy wasn't just in the music or the medicine. It was in the proof that love, expressed through melody, could heal across time, space, and generations. The final note faded away, but its effect would resonate forever, just as Eleanor had composed it. If this story of love, healing, and second chances touched your heart, please hit that like button and share your thoughts in the comments below. Did you ever experience a moment where a small act of kindness changed everything? Let us know. Subscribe to our channel for more powerful stories that prove what Eleanor Harrison knew all along. Sometimes all it takes is $500 and an open heart to change the world. Remember, like a healing melody, love always finds its way home.